Hey, thanks for joining me. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you may know that I've reviewed quite a number of power stations from a company called VTOMAN, and it all started with a series called their Jump series, which had a really kind of unique feature that they had the ability to add a little jump start module so you could jump start your car with these things, which is not something you can typically do with the power station. And the other big thing that the Jump series had going for it was extremely economical in terms of budget priced for the features that you got. And the one Achilles heel that the Jump series had was kind of a limitation to only a maximum of 200 watts of solar input or less, which was kind of a deal breaker if you needed to rely on solar. Well, fast forward a few months to the release of a product called the FlashSpeed 1500, and that was their new FlashSpeed line, and that kind of fixed that little bit of Achilles heel and dramatically improved the solar charging capability amongst a variety of other features that they also added, while still retaining, by the way, the option to jump your car. Well, VTOMAN is now expanding that FlashSpeed line to include the FlashSpeed 1000. And I was very happy with how the 1500 performed in my testing. So today we're going to take a look and see how the FlashSpeed 1000 performs in my testing. And but before we get into all that, let's get this thing out of the box and find out what it comes with. All right, we've got a user manual and some friendly tips for what that's worth. And of course, stickers, because who doesn't like stickers? All right, stickers, whatever. All right, looks like a cable box. Interesting. All right, not much in the cable box, just a standard AC charge cable. And it looks like a couple of USB cables so far, unless there's more in there. But this is a Type A to Type C cable, a little adapter cable. And then this is just a Type C to Type C USB cable. Let's see here. It looks like there's a big old plastic cover. Let's take that off. Looks like there's a case on the top with nothing in it. Guess you can put these up here. I really thought there would be more cables than this. So it looks like, according to the packing list in the user guide, I am missing a car charger, which would be the little 12-volt adapter that you plug into your cigarette lighter socket, probably to a DC 5521 connector to allow you to charge this via your car. But let's take a look and see what's on the front. So it looks like there's an Anderson input, and according to the manual, there's a 300 watt, 10 volt up to 50 volt max on this Anderson input for solar. So it's a 300 watt solar max. So that's only 50% better than the 200 watt constraint on the Jump series. But if you take that 300 watts, if you were to put 300 watts on this and multiply that by 4, you would get 1200 watt hours of charge capacity that you would expect from a 300 watt solar input. 4 to 4.5 is pretty average across the US anyway. You can get as much as a multiplier as much as 5, depending on where you live and what latitude you're in and what kind of sun you get. But that represents kind of like the multiplier for a typical reasonably sunny day of sky conditions. So we should have more than enough to fully top this thing off in a single day of charging. In fact, it should be just a little bit less than a single day of charging. All right, then you've got a couple of USB ports. I'll have to put down here what those actually are because I don't know at the time that I'm looking at this right now. And then we also do have a jumper cable option over here. And that's an optional module that you can buy. I forget how much that is. I'll put the price and maybe a link down below so you can check that out. That allows you to jump your cars. And then there's also a battery expansion option here. So there is an expansion model that's available for this. And at least according to the manual, the expansion module would add about 1548 watt hours to the 828 watt hours that is in this main unit. And that would give you, according to my notes here, about 2,376 total watt hours of rated capacity with one expansion module. I don't think it can handle more than one, but that does give you a decent option if you did need to expand this. Now it does have a pure sine wave AC inverter that is rated for 1,000 watts continuous and 2,000 watts peak, and it does give you three 3-prong outlets. We're going to find out if those are 110 or actually a full 120 or not. And then you've got a bunch of type A ports here, and these are all, well, the bottom one is a quick charge. The top 3 are all legacy. Kind of interesting they don't give you more quick charge ports than that at this point in time. Seems like those would be more likely to be useful than the old legacy ports that only charge at about, I don't know, 10 watts or so, maybe 12 watts. And then you've got a standard car socket here that does charge at 12 volts and up to 10 amps max. So that's pretty typical. And let's see if we can turn this thing on.
That's what she said. Ha.
All right, we're at 80% capacity. And you can see I've just activated the DC. I can activate the AC. Oh, got some fans. We're going to find out how loud those fans are. All right, other than that, there is a vent port here on the side with some branding and a vent port on the other side. And then we have got a nice diffused light on the side. Looks like it's got multiple brightness modes and probably an SOS flicker. Yeah, as usual. Okay, so I like the fact that there is a cable compartment on the top, and you do need an Anderson cable if you're going to be connecting this to a solar panel, because that is the solar charge connector right there. And then the car charge would be this little 5521 connector right there. And yeah, well, we'll get into all those other specs and the details. But let's go put this on the bench, put it in some real world scenarios and find out how it actually performs and whether or not it lives up to the specs. And then we'll talk about pricing and availability and all the things that you might want to know about and figure out whether this is something you really want to consider or not. All right, let's jump into it. See you in a couple seconds. All right, let's kick off testing on this FlashSpeed 1000 with a DC capacity test. We'll find out of that 828 rated watt hours, how many watt hours we can actually get if we're pulling it out of the DC port. So let me go ahead and turn on the DC port here. All right, DC port is activated. We are reading 12.9 volts. Let me go ahead and dial up the current draw. Let's see if we can get a full 10 amp draw out of this. All right, 10 amps, 11.9 volts. Let's let this thing run all the way down until the BMS shuts us down. Find out how many watt hours we actually accumulated. We'll check back when it's done. All right, DC discharge capacity test is done. And if we kind of zoom in over here, we got 689.75 watt hours. Now that's out of a rated 828 watt hours. So that gives us a little better than 83% of rated capacity. So that is a pretty decent number. It's kind of right down the middle average. I wouldn't say it's high or low. It's exactly where I would put an average number for the 30 plus power stations that I've tested, at least with this particular test rig. All right, let's get this thing fully charged back up, and we're going to find out what kind of capacity we can get out of the AC inverter. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and charge this thing up using the VTOMAN VS220 solar panel. So they did send this to me, and it is a 4-panel design. We're going to take a closer look at this thing in the morning, but it does have native MC4 connectors. It's got a nice cable slot there for it. I haven't looked in the bag here to see. Yeah, it actually does have MC4 to Anderson XT60 and DC55, looks like 25. So it does give you an adapter cable for the most common types of power stations. Now this one uses an Anderson connector, as we see right there. So this panel is actually very well suited for this particular power station. It is dark outside. It's pitch dark. In fact, it is 9:04 p.m., so definitely no sun. But we're going to find out, since this thing is all the way depleted, whether it will auto-resume solar charging in the morning on its own without me having to do anything. So we'll go ahead and take advantage of that, since it doesn't look like we have any rain on tap for tomorrow. So unique opportunity to go ahead and try to see if we can get some morning sun on this, see how it reacts. Let's check back in the morning. All right, let's take a look at this 220 watt panel from VTOMAN here in the daylight. And I've got it still attached up here with hooks because I was using it to recharge the unit. So it is suitable to recharge that 1000, that FlashSpeed 1000 in one day. And it's got this pebbled ETFE coating, so very durable. It's got that fiberglass sort of substrate that the panel is on, which makes it super weather resistant. And it is a 4-panel design here, as you can see. Folds out. I would say it's about 7 feet long. Let me get it off the hooks here and we'll take a look at the other side. All right, so here's the back side. As you can see, it's got this nice gray material here, gray canvas material covering it, covering that fiberglass substrate. It does have metal grommets, which is nice. At least the middle 2 panels fold together with these little snaps. And there are legs here underneath the underneath here, and they do have that 3-way elastic, which gives you some flexibility in terms of alignment angle. It's kind of cool that they put the cable pouch actually on one of the legs. I haven't actually seen it before. That's actually kind of a nice design. So the cable pouch is pretty weather resistant. It's kind of a weather resistant bag, and it's got a kind of a rubberized weather resistant, water resistant coating around the zipper. So I ought to put the actual rating here in terms of the weather resistance rating or ingress protection rating down at the bottom once I find out what that is. If we take a look over here, get a clear view at the specs, right? It's the VS220. You can see it's got a peak power of 220 watts. It does work at about 19 volts. Its open circuit voltage though is 220.
Yeah, 220, 221, whatever it takes.
Its open circuit voltage is 22.8 volts with short circuit current rating of 12.15 amps. So that's all the basic specs you would really need to know if this is going to be compatible with your particular power station. Certainly compatible with the FlashSpeed 1000. And as I said, it's about 7 feet long. I do like how they've integrated the MC4 cable in here. Not all of these portable panels have MC4 connectors. A lot of times you have to get an adapter. This one does have native MC4s, and I like how it wraps around the handle, and then the MC4 connectors themselves sort of snap in here to just get them out of your way. So pretty happy with that design. It seems to work pretty well. And then as long as you got MC4s, you can adapt this thing to virtually anything. All right, it is about 11:30 in the morning and very clear skies. Now we don't have perfect sun alignment, but I honestly would have expected more than 58 watts. So I'm kind of curious if I were to, and you can see we actually are charged 16% so far in the, I don't know, what, 2.5 hours of sun, 3 hours of sun that we've had today. But I'm a little surprised that it's not higher than that based on that 58 watts. So I'm curious if, what if I were to disconnect the solar here and then reconnect the solar. I mean, I would expect to be getting more than 100 watts at this point. I'm kind of curious if it will go higher. It's already going higher. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so we're getting 165 watts. This is actually the second time that I performed this test. I did observe this same behavior once before, and I wasn't sure if it was an anomaly. So I ran it a second time, and I have confirmed that in the morning, when it comes on, it will only charge at a fraction, about 1/4 of the solar panel's rated output, even though, as you can clearly see, just by unplugging and replugging, we're now getting 166 watts, whereas before we were only getting 58. So now my recharge time has dropped from like 17 hours to 4.6 hours at this current rate. We have nice clear skies, so I have no doubt that 220 watt panel will fully recharge this FlashSpeed 1000 in under a single day of full sun. But I will also say that it does appear, at least in the current firmware, that you need to unplug, replug in the morning to get the full output, or just plug it in the morning once the sun is up. That also would clearly work. I would give this a partial pass on the solar recharge test. Definitely works, but it does require some user interaction in the morning. You can't just leave it plugged in and have it work exactly as you might expect. So just be aware of that. All right, let's check the usable capacity through the AC inverter. Now I do have this thing fully charged up here. We're at 100%. Turn the AC inverter on. And let's get my little space heater going here. Let's find out how many actual watt hours we can use out of that rated 828 watt hours. Right, this is going to be a just about pretty much a steady 200 watt load. Let's check and see. We are pulling under load right at 110 volts. So this is not a 120 volt output. So if that's important to you, just be aware of that. This is a 110. All right, we'll go ahead and log the watt hours until the BMS shuts us down, and we'll find out usable capacity through that AC inverter. All right, the capacity test to the AC inverter looks like it's done. Let's see if we get anything here. 0%. Okay, let's hook this up to grid power and find out how many watt hours we recorded. All right, looks like we got 660 watt hours. Now that is out of a rated 828 watt hours, so that is right at just a hair under 80%, or basically 80% of rated capacity. So I would classify that as on the bottom edge of average in terms of usable capacity out of the AC inverter. So let's do a load test on the AC inverter for this FlashSpeed 1000, rated for 1000 watts continuous. Let's load it up and see if we can get it right at or very close to 1000, maybe a little more than 1000 watts, and just kind of see where we end up. And I do have a little voltmeter here plugged in, so I can see that we're getting just right at a hair under 110 volts. We're going to see if that drops at all significantly when we put this thing under load. So we are creeping up there right now. Let me go ahead and add some additional load. All right, that gets us to 863. Let me add some additional load, another couple hundred watts, and see what we do. There we go. We are actually just a little over 1120. Let's take that down a little bit. All right, we are at 1021. All right, let's go ahead and start the timer. See if this will run for 10 full minutes. All right, no problem holding just a hair over 1000 watts, 1021 watts to be exact, for a full 10 minutes. And you can see we're reading about 54.3 decibels at full bore on the fans. And so while this is not a super quiet unit, kind of a white noise, not super annoying. So I would give this a kind of a average rating for noise. So let me go ahead and stop this and maybe reset it here. Let's try jacking up the wattage here and see if maybe we add another 100 watts, how long it'll let us run. Let's give that a try. So we didn't get 100 watts out of that little bump, but we got 1064. Actually, we can see what's happening here. We are, if I were to bring that back up, we are dropping the voltage now. And if I were to try to get more out of it, it's going to drop the voltage even lower. So that's, I think, what VTOMAN calls, I think that's the phrase they use, where it's going to drop the voltage to keep you from tripping the overload protection. So that is not great for complex electronics. You definitely don't want to do that with TVs, computers, things like that. But if you were, refrigerators would be another one, or microwaves, definitely do not want to run those past 1000 watts, because you will lower the voltage, and those that will stress those types of electronics. But if you're doing lights, fans, heaters, space heaters, things like that, anything with a rectifier, which would include anything that's got an AC adapter, should be fine even at that lower voltage, but just not anything with complicated electronics. So just be aware of that. So yeah, we're holding steady at 1044 right now, and we are just like I said before, right in that 109, 110 volt range. So I would say that this does pass that 1000 watt rated continuous on the AC inverter. All right, let's put another oil heater on this and just see if we can force this thing into a shutdown state, because it can't keep dropping the voltage on us. although it looks like it is. We got all the way down to 80 volts. And I should be pulling somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 watts at this point, if the voltage weren't being throttled. We add some more. See if we can get this thing to actually trip. Yeah, so we just finally tripped it. So now we've got overload. It's only outputting 1 watt. The fans have shut down. Yeah, so I had to put over 2,000 watts on this thing, really, to finally trip the overload protection. So it does have overload protection, which is good. But you do want to be aware. I would say in general with a unit like this that does not have the ability to turn off that voltage throttling feature, you do want to kind of be aware of the load, and you don't want to exceed that 1,000 watts for more than just a second or two. Or another way to say it might be that you probably don't want to exceed more than about 1,020, 1,040 watts. So maybe just a hair over that 1,000 watt continuous rating for very long, because then it will start to throttle you on the voltage, and that's not something you generally want to do unless you're just hooking a heater up to it, in which case, not a big deal. So yeah, pretty easy to reset the overload condition here. You just start the AC inverter back up once you have removed some of the load, so you're back under that 1,000 watt threshold. All right, let's find out how noisy the power is or is not coming out of the AC inverter on this FlashSpeed 1000. And we're going to use a guitar amp for that, an old crotchety guitar amp. And this is going to tell us whether or not this would be suitable for powering things like, say, a ham radio, or maybe using it for a PA system, guitar amp, something like that. So this amp has obviously no noise suppression in it. And we're going to get a baseline, connect it to grid power here. And I'm going to take my mic off. Then we're going to get a baseline on how clean it is with grid power. So let me go ahead and turn it on. All right, so you can hear the hum, very slight hum coming from grid power. So let me switch this over now. All right, we are now using inverter power. Now let's switch this on and find out if it's any noisier at all. All right, so that is a fail as far as the noisy power output goes. So it's not a problem for everything else, but if you were thinking about using this for a ham radio application or powering a guitar amp, for example, this is not the type of power station that you would want to use for that application, because as you can see, it does generate a fair amount of harmonic distortion in that electrical signal. So just be aware of that. All right, let's check to see how effective the UPS or EPS mode is on this FlashSpeed 1000 to see if it is sufficient to keep this laptop running. And no, the laptop does not have the internal battery anymore. I removed it. So any disruption to the power source will cause the laptop to shut down. I do have it running a little bit of a load just to make sure it's busy when we're doing the test. So as you can see, I've got grid power here going into the front of the FlashSpeed, and I have the laptop power going out of the AC inverter. So we're going to simulate a power outage by pulling the grid power extension cord here and see if we get any disruption in the laptop whatsoever. So let's give it a try. Here we go. Okay, laptop is still fine, did not shut down. So it would appear the UPS test or EPS mode test is a pass. And just to show you there's no trickery here, let me attempt to unplug and replug this as fast as I can, and I'm sure it won't be fast enough. Okay, that was really clumsy, but you can see the laptop went out right away because there's no battery buffer in this laptop. So EPS mode is a pass. All right, let's run through some pros and cons as I see them. So let's start with the cons. So first off, there is no mobile app, and that might actually be a pro for some people, but for me, it's kind of one of those things. If I had the option, I'd prefer to have some mobile app control. Also, the solar input capacity of 300 watts, while it's certainly suitable for this FlashSpeed 1000 by itself, that could be a limiting factor if you plan on using the FlashSpeed expansion battery and you intend to rely heavily on solar recharging. But of course, if solar charging is kind of secondary for you, or you don't plan on expanding the capacity with the expansion option, then the 300 watts of solar input is probably not going to be an issue for you at all. The final con, I would say, is that the AC inverter outputs at 110 volts instead of 120 volts. And this is kind of a conditional con in the sense that it's really only a concern if you plan to use it as a regular power source for something like an AC refrigerator, along with other loads that might cause that output voltage to drop below 108 volts. But as long as you're not doing that, 110 volts is probably just fine and not a problem for most people. Okay, let's talk about the pros. It does have UPS mode, and it does have capacity expansion up to 2,376 watt hours. And like all of the VTOMAN power stations, it does have an optional jumper cable module that might come in handy someday if you're out in the middle of nowhere and your car doesn't start due to a dead battery. So I also do very much like the convenience of this little cable storage thing on top. And like I said earlier, I kind of wish more brands would integrate that kind of thing into their power station designs. And then last but not least, I would say the price is one of the pros. Pricing on this FlashSpeed 1000, when you factor in the current 50% discount coupon on Amazon, will put the price at a very competitive $4.99. And then on top of that, I was able to convince VTOMAN to squeeze out another 3% off discount code that you can apply at checkout, which would bring the price down to just $469. And per usual, you can find that code along with the relevant product links down in the video description below if you're thinking about going and checking it out. Oh, and that VTOMAN 220 watt solar panel that we looked at earlier in the video is actually a really solid option to pair with this power station. They've really improved their solar panel offering from that original 100 watt solar panel that they used to sell. And I would say that this panel is easily one of the best quality portable panels that I've tested in that 200 watt range. And it also has a pretty good Amazon coupon going on right now as well that puts its price, final price anyway, down to about $379, which is actually a really solid price when you compare it to most of the other alternatives in that output class. So hey, if you do want to know more about kind of what specific things you can run with a power station like this and how long you can run them, I'll put a link to my Google spreadsheet down in the video description for you as well. And you can download it. You can key in the battery and inverter capacity specs for this FlashSpeed 1000, and then the spreadsheet will kind of do the rest for you. Okay, so what's the bottom line here? Well, I'd say that if you are expecting to rely heavily on solar recharging and you want to be able to do that in a single day, even if you have a battery expansion module connected and maybe you prioritize things like a full 120 volts and mobile app control, well, this is probably not the best fit for you. But on the other hand, I do think that given the FlashSpeed 1000's very solid core feature set in combination with that compellingly low price with the discounts that are going on right now, it is an excellent option for people looking to get, all of the fundamental must-have features in a unit with better than average build quality at a very reasonable price. Okay, so I think that about wraps it up on this video. If you did find anything at all helpful in there, I'd really appreciate it if you would consider clicking on that thumbs up button for me. It really does help. And by all means, please do let me know in the comments section below if you have any lingering questions about this unit or anything else. And I will do my best to try and get back to you with a response. I do very much appreciate you taking the time to watch this video with me, and I do hope you'll consider joining me for that next one. And until then, have fun out there.